I want to tell you about the man who shaped my fitness more than any coach I've ever hired, any program I've ever followed, and any transformation I've ever gone through. He never sat me down once and talked about fitness. He talked about chores and bikes and what it means to be a man who keeps his word. He talked about God in the car, at the dinner table, and in the middle of discipline, in the quiet moments when he didn't even know I was listening. And somewhere in all of that, he built the foundation of how I approach my body today. This is the story of my dad, what he gave me, what it cost him to give it, and why every single time I step into a gym, every single time I make a hard decision about my health, I hear his voice. There's something that happens with your father as you get older, something nobody really prepares you for. When you're young, he's a superhero. He's the biggest, strongest, and most capable man in the world. He can fix anything, and he knows absolutely everything. Nothing scares him, and you look at him and you think that's what a man looks like. Then you become a teenager, and suddenly, almost overnight, he becomes the man who opposes everything you want to do. You think you figured it out more than him, you push back, you roll your eyes when he talks, and you're convinced that his way of seeing the world is outdated, and that you know something he doesn't, and that you're the one who's actually right this time. And as we all know, you're not. And eventually, if you're paying attention, something shifts again. He stops being the opponent. He becomes one of the most respected figures in your life. A man you actually study, you catch yourself quoting in conversations, and then you pause and realize, that was my dad. I said my dad's words just now. And then if you're lucky, still your father first, always your father first, but your friend. And that's where my dad and I are now. We have real conversations, man to man. He comes to me about things I know. I go to him about things he knows. And there's a lot he knows that I don't. He's lived decades of life I haven't even touched yet. And I go to him with intention now, because I'm aware of something that most men don't always let themselves feel. He won't be around forever. I don't say that to be dark. I say it because it's true. Because it changes how I listen when he speaks. Every piece of advice lands differently when you understand it's finite. Because one day, and I don't know when, God willing, not for a very long time, he will be gone. And I'll be the main man of the Durling family. That's not something I take lightly. That's something I'm preparing for every day. Now, before I get into what he taught me, I want to tell you about the kind of household I grew up in, because it matters. Faith was not a Sunday thing in our house. It was not a cultural box that got checked once a week. It was actually alive. And my dad would speak on the lessons of God in the car, just driving. He'd bring up scripture or something God had been working in him, or a principle he wanted us to understand. Not as a lecture, but as a man who was genuinely walking with God, and he couldn't help but talk about it. We did devotionals. Discipline was rooted in something deeper than rules. Conversations where the word of God showed up in the middle of ordinary life. I have seen my dad model Christ likeness in a way that few men I've ever met have managed to do. In his speech, in how he handles conflict, in the grace he extends to people, including his own kids, when we don't deserve it. I am not where he is, and I want to be honest about that. There's a lot of room between who he is and who I'm still growing into. But he gave me the target, and he showed me what it actually looks like when a man lives what he believes. Not perfectly, but genuinely and consistently. That is the most important thing a father can do. Not be perfect, but be real. Be consistent and keep walking. And then trust that your kids are watching. And I was watching. I was somewhere between 12 and 14, and the chores weren't being done right. Not dramatically wrong, just the quiet, creeping laziness that shows up when you think no one's really paying attention. When you think doing something halfway is close enough. He was a man speaking from deep in his convictions. Stern, direct, with the kind of certainty that makes you sit up straight without being asked. It was almost a motivational speech for a brief moment, except that it wasn't a speech. It was a standard being set. He said, "Durlings show excellence in what they do." That was it. Not a list of rules, not a 10-point plan, not a long lecture, just that sentence. Said with the kind of conviction that doesn't leave room for negotiation because there isn't any. I did not fully understand what he handed me in that moment, because in that moment, it was about chores, it was about sweeping a floor properly, taking out the trash without being reminded, and doing the small things with actual care. But what he actually said and what he actually was teaching was this: whatever is in front of you, do it with your full strength. I hear that line in the gym now. When I'm halfway through a set and the weight is heavy, I'm looking for a reason to stop. When the workout is hard and the easy thing would just be go through the motions, to be present in body but not in effort. when I'm tired and every rep feels like it costs more than it should, I hear him and I hear his voice. Journaling show excellence in what we do. And I straighten up and I finish, not for the aesthetics, not for the approval, but because the standard doesn't have an off switch. And here's what I've kind of personally come to understand about excellence. It is never built in the big moments, it's built in the small ones. The ones no one sees, the ones that don't feel significant, the ones that are easy to skip. The man who shows up with full effort when nobody's watching, that man is building something invisible that eventually becomes impossible to ignore. My dad taught me that over chores, and I applied it to my body and my fitness and the stewardship of it. And it changed everything for me. There was a day around the same age, I had a bike that needed fixing. Wasn't really even that complicated of a fix, honestly, if I'm being pretty real with myself. I was probably just being lazy, and it was easier to ask him than to figure it out on my own. I went to my dad, expecting him to just handle it for me, and he looked at me and he said, "Figure it out." That's not all he said, but in that moment, I thought I was being brushed off. I thought he didn't want to deal with it, and I thought he was just too busy or didn't feel like it and just wanted me to go away for a while. But I was completely wrong. And I know this is the case. I'm not just pulling a lesson from something he was brushing me off with. This is what he actually meant. And what he was doing was far more valuable than just fixing a bike. He was handing me a philosophy. Much like the proverb of give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, and teach a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. That's exactly what he was doing. There is no man coming to give you an answer. There is not a perfect moment when everything lines up and the path forward becomes obvious. There is no formula you find once and follow forever. There is just your problem and the gap between where you are and where you need to go, and you need to figure it out. You research, you adapt, you try things that don't work, you fail and adjust, and you do whatever it actually takes to get there. Now, and I want to be very clear about this because I think people misunderstand it. Figuring it out does not mean suffering alone. We don't do that as Christians. We don't say, oh yeah, I got to figure it out on my own. So Lord, I don't need you. Lord, I'm going to figure this one out. That's not what it means. It does not mean refusing help. It does not mean being too proud to learn from someone who has already solved your problem. My dad built a successful business, and not long ago, he invested $15,000 in a business coach because figuring it out means doing whatever it actually takes, including especially getting the right guidance when you find someone who has already walked the road you're on. I did the same thing with my fitness. When I had been spinning my wheels long enough trying things alone, researching, testing, failing, adjusting, I invested in coaching. I paid real money to compress years of trial and error into months of actual progress. That's not weakness. That's exactly what figure it out looks like at the level my dad was talking about. Because the man who figures it out isn't the one grinding himself into the ground with stubbornness. He's the man who is so committed to the result that he removes every obstacle between himself and it, including his own pride. My dad modeled that his whole life, and he's still modeling it right now. The third thing my dad gave me is the one that changed how I see fitness entirely. And it came from the fact that faith was alive in our home. My dad taught us, not just in words, but in the way he lived, that we are meant to honor God with our actions. All of them. Not just the spiritual looking ones, not just the ones you do on Sunday in a prayer and someone's watching and you want to appear godly. All of them. Because gluttony is a sin. Sloth is a sin. And the body God gave you, the one you're feeding, training, neglecting, stewarding that body is not separate from your faith. It is an expression of it. This reframed everything for me. Fitness stopped being about aesthetics, stopped being about what I looked like or what other people thought when they saw me or some performance I was putting on for anyone else. It became a question of what was I laying before God? Because if I claimed to honor him with my words and with my work, with my relationships, but I am lazy with finding the right system, undisciplined with my body that he placed his spirit inside. And that's right. Being overweight is only caused by one thing overall. It's overeating. It's excess. It's overindulgence. So don't tell me that being overweight and gaining a bunch of weight isn't sin, because it absolutely is, because it only comes from one thing, and that is eating too much. That creates a gap between what I say and what I actually believe. And the men of God don't live in that gap. Not intentionally, not without conviction, and not if they're paying attention. My father paid attention. He spoke the word into ordinary moments, and he talked about God while driving. He disciplined with purpose, rooted in something deeper than rules. He modeled what it looks like to take your whole life seriously, not just the parts that feel spiritual. And it is that lesson, more than any program I've ever followed, more than any coach I've ever hired, that made my transformation permanent. Because when your reason is deep enough, you don't quit. I think about him a lot these days, and I think about the years he poured into me without knowing how much I was absorbing. The standards he set when he thought I wasn't listening, the faith he modeled when I was too young to fully understand what I was watching. Because I want a man who shows excellence in everything he does, full of grace and compassion, firm in what he believes, a man who stands on business, who passes these lessons on to his own children. I want my kids to hear what I heard, to be raised in a house where faith is alive, not just cultural, where the standard is set high and maintained with love, and where their father models what he preaches in his body, in his business, in his marriage, and in his walk with God. I want to be respected the way my dad is respected, to take up leadership the way he has, to die to myself for the people I love. And one day, God willing, a long time from now, when I become the main man of the Derling family, I want the standard he has set to still be standing. Because that's what it means to leave something behind that matters. Not money, not a following, not just a business, a standard passed from father to son. Excellence in the small things will transform your life, because if you're going to do anything, do it with your full strength. You wouldn't give God any less than your best. So why would your fitness be any different? This is not a motivational quote. And if you're a man of faith, a man who holds himself to high standards in his work, in his family, and in his walk with God, your body should reflect that. Not because of vanity, but because of who you are. Because excellence doesn't have a category. It either runs through your whole life or it doesn't really exist. Subscribe to this channel if this is the kind of content that speaks to you. I put this type of content out every week for men who are serious about leading their body, their faith, and their family at the same level they lead everything else. DM me the word comeback and I'll personally reach out to you about potentially solving this problem.